Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports, joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's show, we have some news updates to go through with everyone. We've got a couple of NWSL trades to chat about, some news on the SheBelieves Cup tournament in 2023, and we also want to take the time to remember Grant Wahl. We also want to take the time to welcome everybody if you're joining us live. Hello to everyone in the chat joining us this morning. We want to share a bit of an announcement. We are up for an award, the Signal Awards for Best Individual Episode. It's a huge honor. Thank you to our fans and audience. Vote for us, please. It would absolutely mean the world. We have a link in this episode description. We also have a QR code up there floating around. So please hit that if you're joining us live, and you can go ahead and use that to vote. Was exciting when we found out about this. This is the third time Attacking Third has been nominated for something this year. A3 up for 3 awards. That was really cool.
This is huge. Yeah, I mean, I like that little alliteration, A3 for 3 awards. Yeah, this is a big award, and this is pretty cool. We need fans to vote though. I've like voted already, of course, for ourselves, and you do have to sign in with your email. So use all of your emails and vote for Attacking Third a million times, because that's how we want to win. When we found out we were nominated for this, it was like, this is cool. Do we get a trophy? What do we get? And I did not hear back yet. So I will let you know if we get a trophy, if we win this or how it goes. But either way, thanks everyone for listening. Like we would not be nominated for this. We would not be up for this award if it wasn't for everyone that's listening and joining us live right now on YouTube and follows us and subscribes to us, because we are just here talking soccer, and it's because of you that the people that are actually listening and paying attention and tuning in with us every week, it's all because of you. So thank you very much. We are eternally grateful to all of you, and we love doing this. And it's cool to know that Sandra and I aren't just talking to each other, because, hey, we would still be doing this if it was just her and I here, sitting here talking, drinking our coffee, staying hydrated and doing this. But it's much cooler to know that there are people out there joining us live and listening to us. So thank you for everyone. Lucy, appreciate it. She just voted. She said she just voted. It only took 2 seconds. So go do it. Thanks so much, Lucy. And thanks everyone that listens to Attacking Third.
Yeah, we love it. Again, caught us off guard a little bit, but who doesn't love a pleasant surprise like that? So yeah, just echo all of Lisa's sentiments, and yeah, congrats to everyone else who was nominated too, because it's just like there's a lot of podcasts out there, just to know that our show sort of has an impact, or that people think highly of it. That's pretty cool. Feels nice to know that all the time, millions of times that we go live, sort of, getting recognized throughout the year. Because if there's one thing we do at A3, we stay live. So thanks everybody. We want to actually really kick off the top of this episode though with the number and bits of news that have sort of been circulating around over the last 4 days or so. We're only hopping on live here Tuesdays and Thursdays with everybody during this off season. But one of the bits of news that dropped over the last few days was the passing of Grant Wahl in Qatar, covering the FIFA World Cup. Passed away at the age of 49. The exact causes still currently being investigated. His body has returned home to be with his wife and friends and family, and they're going through autopsies and things like that. But a cardiac episode took place in the press box at Lusail Stadium, and the reaction to this has been met with a lot of shock. Mm-hmm. And myself, I am including myself in that. We're deeply saddened by the sudden passing of Grant Wahl, and it's left me wordless even days later. Yeah. I'm very, very, very speechless. CBS Sports here, we're again deeply saddened by the sudden and tragic passing of Grant Wahl. Grant was an exceptional journalist and tremendous friend, colleague, and ambassador for the game of soccer. Grant's impact and imprint on the soccer community within the U.S. and globally will endure for years to come. All of us at CBS Sports are offering our heartfelt condolences to Grant's wife, Dr. Celine Gronder, and all of his families and friends.
Yeah, it's so devastating. I think you said it exactly right. It's so hard to kind of wrap your head around something like this when it happens so suddenly and tragically, devastating. I mean, if anyone out there who thinks like, oh, I don't think I know Grant Wahl. If you follow the sport of soccer, even just slightly, you know what it means. You know that the World Cup is happening right now. You've probably read his work. He is his writing is everywhere, and he has books out there that you can read. And I think that it's important to touch on, yes, he was in Qatar at this point covering the men's World Cup, but all the work he did for women's soccer in the United States, he was so passionate about it, and the growth of the game, and making sure it had correct coverage and equal coverage, and making sure that the stories of these incredible athletes were being told, but also that he was uncovering the truth and asking hard questions. And he made the soccer journalism in the United States what it is today. He was such a huge part of that. And that's something that I will forever remember about him. And everyone has a Grant Wahl story. You and
Yeah.
I were just talking about this off air.
Yeah.
For those that know him and worked with him, he worked with us at CBS. I've had the pleasure of chatting with him, sending DMs back and forth. If you were in this space as a journalist, there's a very good chance that you cross paths with Grant, and whether that was in person or over like DMs and chatting with one another. But almost everyone has read his work, and if you haven't, go read it, because it's incredible. It's truly devastating, and my prayers and my thoughts are with his wife and his family and all of his close friends. Just devastating.
Yeah, he his reach was endless, honestly, in the space, and I think that that's um what I'm ultimately left with when I think about his passing and sort of his impact on in the sport, um, and what it just sort of meant to the landscape of soccer in the United States. And uh, I was speaking about this with some friends and colleagues over the weekend as we sort of happened to get together, and the timing of all this dropping and just the shock that we were sort of struck with when we saw the news. But of how different people all individually have their own wall connection or wall Grant Wall
Yeah.
story, and I think that that is what sort of kind of speaks to his legacy. How so many folks in the space were sort of you know meeting the news with similar reactions and similar grief. Because with that shock comes the grief. It's the loss, right? And I think for the women's soccer space, um, sort of kind of having a little bit, no, I don't want to say different, but it feels a little bit different when you have um, the most prolific soccer journalist um,
Yeah.
all of a sudden in the women's soccer coverage space, ensuring that he's also like reaching out and making those connections in this
Mhm.
sphere. I remember covering NWSL, and this was when NWSL games were floating around in terms of what it meant to broadcasts have games broadcasted on different areas and platforms. So you're talking about a league that went from YouTube to semi cable deal with Lifetime, sometimes having games on like a Fox Sports One every once in a while. There was no consistent schedule of gaming on CBS Sports platforms or even Twitch platforms. And just to have somebody who was so prolific in that space just sort of reach out to someone who was just doing like freelance work at the time, just doing local coverage of a team at the time, it means so much. And to sort of like see everybody within this side of the space kind of have that similar story, and that there's a lot of people now that you can find who are covering things like on independent levels or blogging levels, and they also have a similar Grant Wall story. And to have somebody reach out to you, like I said, who has such a prolific space and role in the soccer world, sort of reach out, have them sort of recognize your
Mhm.
potential, it means a whole lot.
Yeah.
And it's it again, I can't emphasize enough how sad so many of us in the space are. And we just want to continue to do good work in his honor. And
Mhm.
if there are any updates, in terms of extended memorials and things like that, we'll obviously update folks. But there's a lot of great work that's actually being put out around this. So a lot of other great reporters and journalists in the space who have sort of put pen to paper and have put out some things on their own Grant Wahl stories. So I would encourage folks to go and read those if they are interested in hearing some more really great stories about Grant Wahl as well. So
Yeah.
in his honor, we're going to keep talking about the news.
Mhm.
We're going to pivot to NWSL and news and trades there. We've been talking a lot about the free agency period, and we're going to continue to do that. But some other cool things that have been happening in this offseason are the fact that there are some trades that are happening, or just general player acquisitions that are
Right.
happening, re-signings that are happening. Those are also big deals too for clubs in NWSL as they're preparing for the season ahead of them. But we got to talk about Washington Spirit and one of the moves that they just announced for their club.
Finally, it's about time Washington Spirit makes a move because everything that we've been talking about, we know Gotham's been in the headlines a lot. North Carolina has also made some acquisitions, most recently Kansas City, San Diego, and Washington is a team and a roster that has looks a little small, right? There's not been a lot of players on there. So it was just recently announced that Gabrielle Carle, a Canadian international who spent last year in Sweden, has signed with the Washington Spirit. It's a 2-year contract with another option on the end of that. So she's a new professional. She spent 1 season in Sweden last year, but she plays on the Canadian international side of things. So she has a lot of international experience. She was at the World Cup in 2019 in France with Canada. She's got 35 international appearances. She's won a couple of medals. So she has a lot of experience. She's a defender. She does play a little bit higher up in the midfield sometimes, but she's mostly a defender. So I imagine we'll see her slot into that back line. It's almost a like for like swap out for Kelly O'Hara in that sense with the international experience, what she can bring to the table. Not entirely sure where we'll see her across that back line though, with Washington and kind of how they roll out, because there's still a lot of question marks on their roster, but this is a really big grab for them to get an international player. But you also have to be aware that this is a World Cup year. So how much are we actually going to see this player play? Because I imagine that Carl will be with Canada's national team heading to the World Cup. But this is a huge grab, and she's in Washington for a couple years, 2-year contract with another option on the end of it.
I think when we're looking at some of the clubs that we've been kind of fixated on, I guess, during this off season, um, Washington Spirit maybe hasn't been involved in some of that chatter. We've been talking a
Mhm.
lot about some of the moves that Gotham FC has been making, because they've been making, some pretty good signings in the free agency period. We got to see. Abby Smith and Kelly O'Hara, kind of like, and oh my gosh, I'm forgetting, it's got Kristen Edmonds as well, who's showing up to Gotham and make the option for free agency. So we've been talking about them a lot, right? But we've also been talking recently about the Current. We've also been talking about Chicago and what that's meant for them, because they've had a number of players exercise their free agency. So it was cool to sort of see this kind of drop in, and just sort of see it as something like an acquisition, like a bit of acquisition for the Spirit, because there are clubs that we haven't been able to chat about a little bit during this off-season period. Now we can talk about a good move like
Yeah.
this. And it's also, we were talking a lot about Chicago Red Stars, and how this is a club that had a ton of players on the free agency list, how it was going to be a very, very tall order to try to, re-sign all 7 of them. They've re-signed Nagasato and Aaron Wright, have bid farewell to Morgan Gautrat, Vanessa DiBernardo, Danny Colaprico, Rachel Hill. But they also announced a re-signing of their own. They announced a re-signing for Tatum Milazzo. She is going to be extended. She's going to be with the club through 2024. And I think in terms of player news for the Red Stars, I think this is something else that they want to try to point to and say, like, hey, here's a player that we're going to retain, that we're going to have with us for the next couple of seasons. Candidate for Defender of the Year, someone who made I believe it was the best second 11 for Chicago Red Stars this year. Someone who really didn't have a sophomore slump, right? We saw Tatum Milazzo really kind of slot in during her rookie year for the Red Stars in 2021 and kind of grow up very, very quickly out on the flank, and then saw her go through her second year and really, really put up some really good performances. So she's going to be, with the team for a couple years, and I'm sure that that's something that the club's excited about, that they were able to get done.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge grab for Chicago to keep a player like that. I mean, she's done tremendously, right? Like, she grew so much last year, and to have a little bit more stability across that back line is good. So like, these are the types of moves and trades that are really fun to key in on, because a player like Milazzo, to be able to stay in Chicago and grow on what she's done, fantastic. And I love that for her. I love that for Chicago as well, to have a little bit of stability. One more thing about Gabby Clark that I think is a little bit interesting to just touch on at this point, because the soccer world is incredibly small, right? We know that. We all know that. So Mark Kerkorian, who is the current general manager of the Washington Spirit, he's the former Florida State head coach. And Gabby played at Florida State, won 2 national championships there, and now she's back at Washington. So I think that it's just kind of interesting to see how, like, full circle works, and how incredibly small that this sports world is of women's soccer. So Mark Kerkorian, former head coach of FSU, where Gabby played, and now Gabby has signed with Washington Spirit, where he is the GM.
Yeah, I think, look, it's while we weren't had a whole lot to speak about in terms of player movement for the Spirit as of right now in this window of time, they've been doing some things in terms of their supporting staff, obviously their head coaching staff, right, in announcing that Mark Parsons was going to lead the head coach, the team as head coach. And those are also big moves as well. Maybe they're not like that big player signing acquisition that fans are looking for right away, but those are like those steps that you make in order to continue to have a good pitch, for players, and to be able to recruit and retain them. And having somebody like Kirkern involved as club president is massive for them, right? Because of his connection to the sport and all of the players that have sort of come out of such a huge program in Florida State. So I would anticipate that
successful program, right? Like, that's how you get a player like that, right? You have some type of connection, and you say, hey, we're going to make this worth your while to come to the United States, to the NWSL, and play.
Yeah, I would anticipate that there's players who already maybe even had that on their radar, like, hey, Kirkern's with the Spirit, like, how could I get in with this Spirit? Like, that's how that happens. That's how that stuff kind of works. Sometimes behind the scenes, that sometimes that's all it takes. Having someone in a position that has good relationships with players, playing right now at the collegiate level, but also who have come out of that and are maybe finding themselves in a phase of their pro career where they're perhaps in Europe and they want to find themselves back playing stateside. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on for the Spirit. Let's see if those connections can continue to bloom and blossom for the Spirit, for sure. Look, lots of re-signings. I think Orlando Pride's another one of those clubs that we were looking at in terms of, are they going to be able to nab somebody off of that free agency list? But we've seen and heard some re-signings for them. They've also re-signed Carrie Lawrence, Viviana Villacorta. They've extended her as well. Erica Timrak has agreed to a 2-year contract with the Pride as well. So players that have found themselves already with this franchise have kind of taken some of their first steps as professional players, and also a veteran like Timrak, able to ensure that you have her coming back. I think that is really, really huge. you're going to need that good mix. I think if you're finding yourself in the midst of a rebuild, you've got to have that combination of young talent that you can sort of pitch
Yeah.
on a rebuild, and you've got to have a couple bit of veteran pieces who will also want to buy into that as well. So good on the Pride for that one. So I mean, we're gonna continue to keep an eye on not just only like the big free agency moves, but any of the re-signings I think are really, really interesting for certain clubs as well. Because I know like for OL Reign, similar to Chicago, we're like, hey, like there's some pieces here that, you know, we would have thought that maybe we would have heard something about already, whether it's somebody like a Lauren Barnes or, you know, a Megan Rapinoe. But in this area of free agency, we've just heard some re-signings. So we obviously Quinn was the biggest of those in October, but throughout these last couple months, you know, somebody like Sam Hyatt, you know, Marley Carnelis is someone that they just recently inked as well. They said, hey, let's get you in for another year as well. Only had a few appearances for the Reign in 2021. I think just maybe like 3 or 4 appearances, but 1 start. But there's enough there for Laura Harvey to say, let's ensure that we get another year with this player, you know, to maybe ensure that they have got another body in the midfield in light of a World Cup year coming up. They're probably going to be missing some pieces, right? So little things like that, I think are the things that I look forward to when it comes to an off season. Like I know we're all excited about free agency. It's the first time it's ever existed in an off season. So that, and it's delivered, I think, to up to this point. It's been very exciting. But I think all those little, like those signings in between the big things like free agencies or big acquisitions, I think are also very, very important to pay attention to these. That's
what rounds out a team, right? The players that are returning, whether they're spent their first rookie year with the club, and now they decide they want to come back, and the club also wants them, or if it's a veteran, like that's what fills the holes of a team, and that's what allows you to get more players, right? If you can say, hey, we've re-signed X number of players, and these are the ones they're going to stay. So you get an idea of what the team is likely to look like. You're more able to get young players out of the draft or different trades or other free agents and say, hey, look what we're already building here. It is incredibly crucial.
Yeah, pay attention to those depth signings. That's what we'll refer to them as. Take a look at that. Before we cut out for a break, listen, we gotta celebrate some things here as well. Okay, not keep it too somber. We also have to celebrate. Congratulations are in order to Mallory Pugh. Got married. Saw some cool photos come out over last weekend. Something else that was really cool, reporting out of People with all of the cool photos, was the menu in this. It was a really good menu, I guess, for the wedding. Like that was of a particular note, like that people were like quote tweeting. I saw it said, wow, look at all this cool food at the wedding.
Like love a People exclusive because we get to see all these incredible photos. Congrats to Mallory Pugh, Dansby Swanson, her now husband, MLB player who's with the Atlanta Braves. I actually think he's a free agent right now, but I don't know about that for sure. I know that Philadelphia Phillies were looking at him. They passed on him. We're not getting him. But yeah, this is huge for Mallory. So exciting. We knew they were engaged, and I just love off-season wedding. Sandra, when you and I have talked to so many players, whether it's at the end of the season or at the beginning of the preseason, we're always like, hey, how was your off-season? And so many of them are like, it was filled with weddings, because these athletes, they can't get married in season. You don't have any time to do that, let alone plan a wedding. So they do it in the off season. So this is just one of the big ones that have been happening. Yeah, she looks stunning. They look so happy. And thank you, People, for the exclusive, for all the photos to look at it. Some videos that I saw floating around on Instagram. It was stunning. Huge congrats to Mallory and Dansby.
Absolutely. Listen, we've got some more things to chat about with everybody on this episode, but we're going to do that right after a quick break.
You'd be Mrs. Dutton.
I would.
Seems we're neighbours. I've acquired the Strafford Ranch.
Well, this is the Yellowstone, and you have no rights here.
Jacob, you can't start a range war.
Range war's already started.
'23 new series streaming December 18th exclusively on Paramount Plus.
All right, let's hop into U.S. women's national team news. Let's chat a little bit about She Believes Cup. U.S. Soccer announcing the dates and the teams for the 2023 edition of She Believes Cup. It's going to be kicking off in February, running from the 16th through the 22nd, and it's official. Brazil, Japan, and Canada are the three teams participating in the tournament alongside the United States.
Huge that we get this announcement, we get dates. We had talked about it, that the U.S. was going to play a number of friendlies, a number of matches and opportunities, game matches to get competition against other top powerhouses in the world before the World Cup, and She Believes was one of them. This was a tournament I know you and I had both circled. A lot of people had circled to kind of say, hey, who can the U.S. get to come to the U.S.? Because this tournament is always played on U.S. soil. That's fantastic, right? So it's a little bit of an advantage for the U.S. so they can do that. But to bring over teams like Canada, Brazil, Japan, these were teams that were excited to play against. And I think we picked them to play against them when we did like our top 8 picks of who we want the U.S. to play against in 2023. I know Japan was definitely on that list, and I know I had Canada definitely on that list, Brazil also on this. I mean, these 4 nations are ranked top 11 in the world right now. US is, of course, number 1. Canada jumped up to number 6. Brazil is ranked 9th, and Japan is 11th. So it's incredible to see. It'll be the tournament for the 7th year, and we're now back to different locations, right? That happened a couple years ago before COVID. It was in 3 different locations with 3 different double headers. That's kind of how the tournament rounds out, with 3 double headers. The winner is determined by total points, 3 points for a win, 1 point for a tie. And then, of course, it goes to all these different tiebreakers, goal differential, total goals, head-to-head, all these different things. But the competition is what is the most exciting to see, because it kicks off February 16th, the U.S. against Canada. These are Olympic gold medalist winners. It's a rematch of the CONCACAF championship. That's something that I'm also starring as well. This is 2 teams that I really want to see go against each other, and we get to see that February 16th to kick off the tournament.
Yeah, I'm excited. Look, when the news dropped, I was like, this is good. You know, we've already gotten essentially the first set of matches for the United States women's national team to keep an eye on in 2023. So they made the announcement that their January camp is going to have a little bit of a different look to it. They're going to take the group of players to New Zealand. They're going to have a 6-day training camp in New Zealand. That's where the entirety of their group stage is going to take place for the World Cup. And then that 6-day training camp is going to conclude with a 2-game series against New Zealand. So we already knew how they were really kicking off their 2023. And we usually anticipate something like the She Believes Cup tournament to take place in that next FIFA window. And it's typically a February or March set of dates, depending on the year. So we were anticipating what that was going to look like. And to sort of get that before 2022 closes out, that was also exciting for me as well. I also love that once the teams were announced or unveiled, that a couple of them were on our kind of wish list. We've been cranking out the content still here in the off season. And one of the things that we did talk about was, within some of the windows that are going to exist in 2023, who are some teams that we would like the United States women's national team to go up against and sort of face off before they head off to the World Cup. And I love that Canada is returning for She Believes Cup. Love that it's Brazil. Love that it's Japan. I think when you're looking at these 3 nations, you're looking at 3 completely different styles of play. And I think that that's going to, present a pretty healthy competition for this iteration of the She Believes Cup, because some of the things that they're returning to, like you mentioned, Lisa, the fact that it's going to be a multi-facility tournament. Again, they're going to play at 3 different areas. It's going to mirror that sort of quick competition, the quick fixtures in succession, in terms of like, here's one game, now we got to travel to play this other match, and now we've got to travel again to close out this round robin tournament, all these things that are kind of mirroring tournament-esque type of events. They're trying to get that feel and trying to get that type of stuff into focus for the players that might be going to the World Cup. So I'm curious if maybe come 2023 if we're going to get another update about an announcement.
I know.
For another pictures.
Honestly, we might, but time will tell, right? I'm hoping that we continue to get some crazy friendlies because that's the best thing that's going to prepare these players. And even the She Believes against Canada, Brazil, Japan, like this competition is good. Yes, the United States and Canada have a history of playing against each other, especially most recently in the CONCACAF W Championship. But Canada is a different team, and they're also a team that is coming off of a gold medal, and they're looking to go into the World Cup and dominate and win. Like people cannot sleep on Canada. You look at what this Canada side has done most recently. They played against Brazil, and they split those results. It was 2-1. They won one. They lost one. Canada has also played friendlies against Australia, Argentina, Morocco. These are really top competitions and also a lot of different styles of competition. So Canada's bulking up their schedule of who they've played and the experiences they've had. I mean, when you look at Brazil, South American powerhouse, they played against Canada, right? They split those results 2-1, as I just mentioned. But before that, Brazil was on a 10-game winning streak before they dropped one to Canada. And now they're back on the winning side of things. So this Brazil side is going to pose a lot of questions to the United States and what they can do, but also Japan. This is a perennial Asian power team that we put on our list that we wanted to see the United States play because the Japanese style of soccer is so intricate and it's a lot of tiki-taka and playing and that type of style that the United States can struggle against. We saw them struggle against teams that play like that. And how can the United States combat that type of style? I mean, when you look at Japan and where the friendlies that they've most recently played in, they also played against England and they also played against Spain, two teams that United States just played against in like 2 sessions ago, right? It was Germany and then it was England and Spain right before that. And Japan lost to England 4-0. And then Japan lost to Spain 1-0. So I think the Japan USA match is one that I am so keyed in on. February 19th. This is a match that I really want to see how the United States plays. I mean, we're a bit away from this. We still have the January camp and what's going to happen in New Zealand and who's going to be on that roster. What we're going to see from Blackwood-Nofsky, and I don't think it's going to be anything too crazy or too different, but I think we'll get a really good sense of the different styles of soccer that the United States can play and can also play against when we look at Canada, Brazil, and Japan. And that's frankly what I want as a team that's leading into a World Cup.
No, I'm with you 100%. I think you hit it spot on with Japan. I think it'll be interesting to see how the US go up against a team that also want to spend a little bit of time on the ball and kind of keep it on the ground at moments. It'll be interesting to see if they get frustrated by that or how they can maybe break that down a bit. It's a little bit different, going up against a challenge of a team where you're saying our challenge is going to be whether or not we could sort of break down a mid or low block from a team that might be looking to just sort of hit on the counter. And then when you go and look at Japan, they want the ball. They're saying like, hey, we want to get in there with your middle third and win the ball and wrestle that away from them as well and sort of, take it to you the other way. So I'm eager to see that matchup more than I think maybe some of the others. Although I think Brazil and the United States always produces some really, really good stuff. I think this is going to be a point in time in the year that we have to make sure that we pay attention to because we could see the return of some players from injury, perhaps, as well. Certain players are in certain timelines. And I mean, listen, if this is a game that we see somebody like Catarina Macario get minutes or somebody like Marta get minutes for Brazil, I'm tuning in.
That makes me so happy that these players that have been injured and suffering and we haven't seen them for so long, they're probably going to be back.
I mean, yeah. So I think people need to I think folks need to pay attention to that as well. It's like, yes, it's like we're excited about these teams, these 4 nations getting together and going head to head, but there's also the possibility that maybe we might, see some things. I don't want to get everybody's hopes up to too high, because it all depends on the person and the player, right? And
Right.
where they are and their fitness, and how comfortable they're able to go. But we'll see. And before that is going to be the January camp, and so we're going to get a real early look at probably the group of players that the coaching staff is going to continue to keep an eye on moving forward to the March to the World Cup. But in the meantime, that's all we've got for you this morning. Thank you, everybody, for joining us live as always and listening to Attacking Third. Please download, follow, listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts. You can watch us too, subscribe, youtube.com/Attacking Third. And a reminder, before you leave us, please vote for Attacking Third for the best episode in the Signal Awards. It really means so much to us. The link is in the episode description. If you're watching, hit that QR code. And we'll be back for Sandra and Lisa Roman. This was Attacking Third.